were probably active during that decade. I also see a lot of young people for whom this must seem like an absolutely ancient history, and I suppose for you it is. So what are we actually remembering when we talk about remembering 1968? Is it the year 1968 itself? Is it something called the long 1968 or the 60s? Another kind of term that gets bandied around. What I want to argue here is that I'm going to talk about not just 1968, but an entire period of 6 or 7 years, 7 or 8 years maybe, which is one of the examples of what I call a revolutionary conjuncture in the history of the 20th century. Now, there haven't been very many of these. There's three, which the 68 is the most recent one, for reasons we might want to talk about later on. But what we're looking at here is a situation that's international, perhaps even global in its reach. That's extended, as I said, for 6, 7, 8 year period of time. It's not something that happens over a couple of weeks or a couple of months. And one which gives rise, in some cases, to genuine revolutionary situations. That is a situation where the question of state power is actually posed. Because we actually have a revolution, we actually overturn the government, take over the state, and so on. Revolutionary situations just last for weeks, days, months. They're not long periods. The conjuncture I'm talking about is. Now, if you want to argue that 1848, 49, or 1905, 1914, well, conjuncture doesn't try to discuss that. And I'm going to argue here there have been three. One from 1917 to 1923, then from 1943 to 1949, and then finally from 1968 to 1975, 76. What's interesting about all these is that none of them was started with an economic crisis. There's a kind of cliche of revolutions that you get an economic crisis and then revolution breaks out because people are subjected to poverty and extreme shocks and so on. Actually, that doesn't seem to be the case. If you think about 1929, for example, huge economic crisis, does it lead to revolution? No, it leads to the rise of fascism in Germany, and although there is resistance later on in the 30s, it doesn't seem something that detonates the revolutionary process itself. Similarly, more recently, 2008, 2009, I mean, certainly there was resistance later, the Arab Spring, Occupy, and so on, but it doesn't seem, the very fact of going into recession or economic downturn does not seem automatically to produce revolutionary upheavals. In the cases of three I mentioned here, the first two, what produces the revolutionary upheavals is actually a consequence of inter-imperialist war in both cases and resistance to that. In 68, there's also imperialism at war in Vietnam and elsewhere, but that isn't what kicks it off. But there's certainly been an economic crisis in 1968. Perhaps a slight beginning of the downturn becomes fully realised in the 70s, but it's not. It's actually still a period of boom when the events of 68 kick off. So what's, I think, interesting about these kind of events, going to specifics of 68 in a minute, is that they involve what Lenin, who knew a bit about revolutions, called heterogeneous, dissimilar, contrary movements coming together, overlapping and merging. He's talking about Russia in 1917. This seems to be typical of all of them. It's got things that seem quite disparate, quite separate from each other, but they're all coming together and fusing and overlapping in these kind of ways. That's one of the reasons you recognise it as an international kind of conjuncture. Secondly, if people are aware of that, people know that the things that are going on relate them to people in other continents and other countries. Even if they seem to be quite different kinds of struggles, there's a unanimity. People feel there's something that brings them together there. And there's also the possibility of a revolution spreading. It's obviously possible to have revolutions in individual countries. We think of the Paris Commune in 1871, or think of Spain in 1936, 37, particularly in Catalonia, or perhaps Hungary in 1956. These great revolutionary moments, but they don't spread. There's not a general revolutionary wave at that time. And so the answer is one of the reasons why these revolutions fail is because they are isolated, and it's not possible in terms of that period to spread beyond it. What that means, I think, is that revolutions aren't possible just as the old Martina that we still have at any time, any place, anywhere. Let's say a set of conditions, and these have to be international in a sense for capitalist conditions anyway for revolution to take place. Okay, so what's just one final thing about it, I suppose, is we're talking about these movements which are heterogeneous and dispersed and so on. Often they existed for quite a long time. It's not as if they all just come into being like that in 1968 or 43 or 1917. When we think about the American Civil Rights Movement, for example, it had been going since the 1950s, yet by the late 60s it's been transformed in that context into something quite different, of black liberation, not just civil rights, but liberating the black population, and that seems to be part of the world revolutionary movement. That's different. So if things could feed in, which have existed maybe for some time, but actually they've changed by the context in which they're now taking place. Okay, so 1968 itself. I think it's important that we reject the kind of cliche of three worlds, first, second, third, a kind of bourgeois cliches since the mid-50s, which also has a decalism and a certain Trotskyist approach to the world. So you've got the third world and the German revolutionists necessarily, you've got the Stalinist states which have some sense of culture states supposedly, and the political revolutions necessary, and then in the developed world you've got the kind of ordinary, straightforward socialist revolution taking place. None of this, I think, makes any sense. And if you think of the Stalinist regimes in particular as being forms of state capitalism, that nothing to do with socialism at all, then clearly that messes up the whole three worlds thing altogether. And I think you have to see the world as a more kind of continuum from the advanced imperialist metropolitan centres at one end, the United States, Britain, France, and so on, all the way through to the poorest of third world countries at the other end. It's a continuum. It's not a big size of break. Capitalism dominates in one way or another all of these. And if you think of it, for example, Polish shipyard workers in Gdansk in 1970-71, so-called communist Poland, what they are doing is obviously got a lot of parallels with shipyard workers occupying and striking in Glasgow in 1971 in capitalist Scotland. I mean, the struggles are actually quite similar, and both of them are quite unlike, for example, the struggle of the Maoist Red Guards in Beijing at the same time. So I think we need to see the similarities of these struggles. It might seem to be quite different from each other because they're in different parts of the world. We think of France, particularly in '68, student uprising, then joined the workers' strike. The general strike is the biggest one in the world seen, apart from the Russian Revolution at that point. But actually, similar things are happening in Uruguay. And Montevideo, at the same time as in France, there was first of all a student rebellion that was joined by a general strike of the workers there. And in Senegal, Dakar, the capital of that state, is exactly the same thing happening again. And these are not just relays of what happened in France. I mean, in fact, they were happening simultaneously. They weren't inspired by France, but similar dynamics going on in places that we think of being the third world of the global south. So we have to look for the kind of similarities. And it's not clear to me that a lot of this, some of the struggles taking place in the so-called third world aren't actually more important in terms of working class struggle, or at least as important as ones taking place in Western Europe. Think about Argentina, for example, and the Cordobosa uprising in '69. Equally as important as I think the Italian hot offensive that took place that year, although it's less often discussed in those kind of ways. So we have to break away from this way of seeing the world as divided into these kind of three ways. I mean, for convenience, I will occasionally say the first world or the global south or something. That's because you've got to use this kind of terms as shorthand. What I'm suggesting is we don't think of everything as being massively different from each other in every sense. Whether it's working class, and you're going to get some kind of struggle taking place. Okay, what's the context for this deal? Obviously, it's the post-war boom, a period of the greatest growth and expansion that capitalism has ever had and probably will ever have. It's quite an exceptional period in capitalist history. It's never been experienced before, and I very much doubt we'll ever have it again. Huge growth from about 1948 through to 1973, beginning of a slowdown from 1966 onwards, but certainly for about 25 years, we have fantastic development of capitalist growth, and that feeds down into the working class. For a start, there's almost, for all intents and purposes, full employment in the West and the so-called socialist world and parts of the third world as well. And that's accompanied what gives you confidence, especially if they're able to unionise in a situation where you're not worried about your job, and where classically in Britain, people could leave their job on Monday and go to another job on Tuesday in a different factory, then you feel a sense of power, or at least the possibility of challenging your bosses, because you're not worried about being unemployed. You're not worried about what the DWP or what they're going to do to you if you lose your job. And secondly, accompanying the full employment, essentially, is like an increase in the social wage. And in this country, that's obviously the NHS, public housing, and so on, that make people feel more secure and more capable of challenging the social problems that they had. Now, I don't think we want to exaggerate this, however. There's a kind of way in people think that everybody's living in massive quasi-luxury in the 50s and 60s, and compared to what people are experiencing under neoliberalism, there's an element of truth in that. But if I can advert to sort of autobiographical mode here, I was born in '57, and for the first 10 years of my life, mother, father, sister Shona, and me all slept in the same room until I was a teenager. Right? Now, you think that's inconceivable now, but actually that was quite normal throughout the '60s. The heyday of the post-war boom. We had an outside toilet, which we shared with our next door neighbour. There was a kind of wash house in which the woman in the tenement would go in and wash clothes and mangle them by hand to get the water out of the coast for the hung up and the drying grate next to the bomb shelter. With the then kept our tools. So we then kept our tools. We didn't have a refrigerator, we didn't have a phone, we didn't have a car. We had a cooker and we had a TV, obviously. But I mean, that's, so it's, if you want to get in touch with someone, you actually have to physically go around to their house and speak to them, or send them a letter. Or possibly if they had a phone, you'd go to one of these things called phone boxes and dial up the number and then call them after 3 minutes. So I had a very happy childhood. But it was, looking back at it, this is kind of, the things we consider to be poverty stricken. Now, most people look like that. And so it was really only when you got to the late 60s or the 70s that people's living standards began to seriously improve. When I was 10, the council decided that I couldn't sleep in the same room as my sister any longer because I was a teenager and there was a rule against that. So we got a council house out in the west end of Aberdeen, a new housing scheme which was paradisical. All had their own bedrooms, we had a bath, with an inside toilet, fantastic. This is council housing. This is the kind of things that it's about. It's at that point, this is beginning to happen more generally. It's interesting that there's a survey done, it's kind of happiness or contentedness survey, which thinks that people in Britain were most content in 1976. That's about the point at which it began to feed through, for people who were getting salaries, people living standards and so on. Just at the point it's about to come to an end, and the problems about the UK. So this is just to get us background. Let's not get too carried away with the idea of how marvellous this was during the 50s and 60s and early 70s. What it did do was give people the confidence to fight. And in fact, feeling, okay, we can fight. Why should we live in these conditions? Is the kind of thing that circulated through a lot of working class communities. There's another factor in terms of working classes. And that is what we call uneven and combined development, which in this context means, I think, people going from rural, not exactly peasant communities, employment into industrialisation and urbanisation, and all the kind of tensions and explosions that come out of that. Now we think of that's happening in the third world, and it did, certainly, but it also happened in the first world. It also happened in Italy and France. And this is partly what led to the explosion in 1968 and 69 in those countries. Because workers coming in from quite different conditions actually are more liable to be militant because they don't have any of the constraints, they haven't built up years of expectation of reformism and operating in that kind of way. And so you get it, certainly in Italy in 69, but I think also get it in France in 68. Obviously not in Britain, because they're the oldest and most established capitalist country that doesn't really exist anymore. But in most of the rest of the world that was still happening. You kind of liberating the whole peasant communities, going into the cities and the towns and the factories for the first time. It's a big factor here. The other thing I think is contextually important is the existence of a revolutionary left. And it's particularly the case in the West. From really the Stalinisation of Russian Revolution in the late 20s right the way through to the 50s, there hasn't really been a serious genuine revolutionary movement in the Communist parties. It ceased to be revolutionary parties, I think, very early on in a way. 1956 is decisive here. The kind of crisis of the communist movement, the class struggle in Poland and the revolution in Hungary, and the creation of workers' councils in Hungary, the very thing that Stalinism has suppressed, made people want answers. So why is this happening? Why is the Russian Revolution become corrupted? Why are they invading Hungary and killing workers and so on? And in a sense, the Trotskyists and other revolutionaries around were able to provide answers that broke away from Stalin's explanations. And then, for that reason, the kind of revolutionary left was able to grow, not to gigantic sizes. I mean, it went from tens and hundreds to thousands in some cases, but certainly they were ready in that sense by 68 to be able to intervene in a way they wouldn't have been able to do at any point previously. So this, I think, creates the basis of an actual political discussion and the ability of the left to intervene and give some kind of direction to what's happening in 68 itself. Okay, that's the background. What's the actual components that go into making 68 in that sense of 68 to 1976? I'm going to suggest there are 10 here. It's possible we could break it down further, or maybe, just for the sake of trying to have a kind of structure, let's think of it 10. And we divide them into two. The first 5 are actually ones which are far more relevant to the global south or the more backward areas of the west. And they often mean kind of once for all transitions or shifts. The second lot are much more relevant to the west itself, well, not exclusively, and they are ones which have the potential in some sense to go beyond capitalism. So first of all, we have what I think of as essentially the completion of the bourgeois revolutions in Africa and the Middle East and parts of Asia. So thinking here about just 2 aspects to it. One is the kind of end of the remaining ancient regimes King Empress in Libya, or Emperor Haile Selassie in Ethiopia, or overthrown by military coups, basically built on the model of Egypt back in the early 50s, at Nasser, often by military junior officers who in some sense thought they were applying Marxism, Leninism, or at any rate copying what Russia had done in terms of actually nationalising sections of the economy and so on. That's one bit of it. The other bit of it is the kind of final struggle against actual colonialism, and this really means the Portuguese colonies in Africa, Guinea-Bissau, Angola and Mozambique, because that was the last real revolt of actual colonialism. And it's a kind of nerve fusion of the two, I suppose, in the Middle East. Britain's final withdrawal east of Suez, leaving behind what became the United Arab Emirates, a kind of top-down reform above the operation to kind of send off a genuine revolution in below, but the British did leave, and this new kind of sort of state emerged in 1972. So that's one thing. Second is the kind of national liberation movements in post-colonial, nominally independent bourgeois states, which are aligned with the United States. And here, the obvious, this is Vietnam, this is Cambodia, this is Laos. Southeast Asia is classically where these states emerge, and of course Vietnam is the fulcrum of the struggle. In fact, I doubt whether the guerrilla movements in Laos and Cambodia would have won had it not been for spilling over the Vietnamese struggle into them. I mean, there's many guerrilla movements in Latin America, for example, which did fought for decades without achieving the overthrow of the regime. FARC in Colombia, which one would think of, which existed for 40 years, and in the end simply gave up and became a conventional political party without having achieved any of its goals. So, but nevertheless, this was the kind of, Southeast Asia was the centre of where these kind of struggles were taking place. Third one is the kind of conflicts within the Stalinist regimes themselves, or the developmental strategy. That is failed. We've done the basic establishment of the regime, we've done some basic industrialisation, what do we do now? And the two areas where it's mostly focused on were Czechoslovakia in Europe and China, of course, in Asia. And what happened in both those cases was that things got out of control. The kind of sections of the bureaucracy that fighting each other sort of opened up space in which workers and students and peasant students could actually begin to fight on their own behalf. And that's obviously repressed eventually, but it opened up a kind of struggle in Czechoslovakia, for example, massive worker occupations and strikes after the Russian invasion in '68. And out of the appalling confusion of the so-called Great Cultural proletarian revolution in China, there were genuine movements of people beginning to try and comprehend what Maoism actually was. Fourth is a kind of struggle for democracy against quite long-established military dictatorships or other forms of dictatorship in Europe, and particularly the Mediterranean. So Greece, Portugal, Spain. Portugal and Spain, dictatorships since between the wars. Greece had fluctuated a bit more between dictatorship and some form of bourgeois democracy. In that sense, it was more like the Latin American kind of cases. But the ones in Europe were different because it's in Europe. Europe, the fulcrum of democracy and freedom and blah, blah, blah. So obviously this is a kind of anomaly that these kind of military dictatorships existed within the umbrella of NATO and within the ambit of American and British imperialism. So there's no dictatorships, there's specific things that has to be overthrown. And finally, in this kind of group, there's a struggle for equal rights against regimes which are forbidding them on grounds of ethnic or racial identity. And this encompasses a fair bit of the world, actually. Think of Roman Catholics in Northern Ireland, but also the black population of South Africa, or beyond that, in the USA. I mean, the southern states of the USA is actually different. The struggle there is different from in the north because of the kind of hard holdings of the Jim Crow rules and so on. So there's these kind of, in a sense, things which could be reformed. With capitalism still surviving, but at the moment it feels there can also be potential for a revolutionary struggle emerging out of them. All the things I mentioned are compatible with capitalism, but they all have potential to be part of the process of overthrowing it. Okay, so that's the first group, mainly relating to the global south or the backward areas of Europe. The next five are the ones that are most relevant to here in different ways. The first, and perhaps most obvious, is the anti-war movement. And I think that's tied completely to the struggle in Vietnam. You know, the slogan victory for the NLF, the National Liberation Front. If there was victory for the NLF, that would be the end of the anti-war movement, obviously, because they won. So in a sense, although it's like a specific movement, it's tied very much to what's happening in Asia and to the anti-imperialist struggle in Vietnam for unification. It's worth, I think, just contrasting the anti-war movement here, particularly with the campaign for nuclear disarmament, which precedes this, because there was very much a sense in CND of moral purpose, of peace being the objective. In the Vietnam War campaign, the dominant sense of the movement is much more of a revolution, of supporting the victory of the forces fighting American imperialism, and peace in an element is actually much weaker, certainly by the time we get to 68. But obviously this is a movement which involves different forces and groups. The second thing I want to draw attention to is obviously students. Now, there's a way of talking about 68 in which all people are talking about the students, and I apologise to students in the room, I think you're doing the living as well, but there's a way in which, especially if you focus on the year 68, or 68, 69, but actually it looks like it's all about students. Let's be clear what students meant at this point, because there have always been students, obviously, but usually they've been quite counter-revolutionary. I mean, the old legendary talk about the students, scabbing during the British General Strike in 1926. Russia was different, and perhaps you look at France in 1848 different, but by and large, students were the sons and daughters of the bourgeoisie or the ruling class, being educated to go and carry out their role. That's obviously not what students are now, or what they were really in the post-war period. The massive expansion of the university sector, technical colleges as well, much more involved with women in this. So you get a group emerging who are in a particularly tense, contradictory situation. They've got to be trained sufficiently to carry out supervisory or various other tasks for capital, but at the same time, they're not allowed to think beyond certain boundaries of what's acceptable within the whole process of their education. So that causes all sorts of tensions. Students are obviously not a class. Neither are they in a press group, because the press groups tend to retain the characters they have once you stop being a student. From a worker or a supervisor or whatever, but you don't carry on being a student forever. So it's not the same as an oppressed group or a particular identity group. I mean, we could say that maybe now students are becoming an oppressed group because of things like unrepayable student debt, but that's a relatively recent development. It certainly wasn't the case in 1968, but that would have been recognised that as a problem. So students will intervene in three ways. They either just take part in politics as students, like the anti-war movement or whatever, but it doesn't particularly affect them as students, or they took part in protesting about things that their universities were doing, quite often connections between the military and the universities they were involved in, or they were fighting about specific things related to their own conditions, like actual size of classrooms that were big enough or what. This is also a period of inflation, and often a lot of wage demands were driven by a need to resist the kind of inflation of prices that were carrying on. This isn't true of Britain, this is true across the whole of the West. If you combine that with the kind of explosive quality, as of the new created working class being pulled in from the countryside and small towns into the larger factories and city life, you begin to get a situation of quite explosive tension, and people being prepared to fight in ways they wouldn't have done in the 1950s or earlier 60s. It's important to say this because there's a kind of argument that thinks that May 68 in France just came out of nowhere. Just exploded. So it isn't true, actually. If you look back, you can see there's a load of strikes taking place, first on the west of the country, then generalising throughout France. And in a sense, what happens in May 68 is that's hitting Paris and becoming generalised into a general strike. It's not that it came out of nowhere. People may not have expected it, that's certainly true, but if you look back now, you can see this was emerging. And obviously in Britain, there wasn't a generalisation that there was in France, but certainly you're getting some of the things happening. Generally speaking, I think there are three conditions under which large working class explosions take place. One is where you have an economic revival after a period of slump, and people all of a sudden feel, okay, well, this is something to fight for now, we feel able to do this, because there's employment and all the rest of it. Or in this case, what I think you're seeing is partly that, but partly a second one, which is where there's a beginning of an economic downturn within a pure situation of actual wealth and expansion. You just begin to get the first glimmerings of it, and say, oh, we're not putting up with this. We're this time to resist this kind of stuff. Let's do it. That seems to be what's happening mostly here in 68. Some 66, 67, you're beginning to get the first tremors of the slowdown in the world economy, and that's beginning, like in Britain, the Labour government tries to restrain top stewards into this life and all this kind of stuff. It's beginning to take place this time. Okay. Importantly, to kick off the thing in 68 is a series of triggers, events which seem to detonate the whole process. This is true of two previous periods like the Russian Revolution, obviously in 1917, the Russian victory over the Nazis at Kursk and Stalingrad, and then the Allied invasion in 1943-44. In the case of 68, there are two triggers, I think. One is the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, where the National Liberation Front launched an onslaught into South Vietnam, reached as far as Saigon. Totally, all the things the Americans said, we're winning, there's no problem, we can defeat these people, they're a bunch of peasants, and so on. No, they managed to reach Saigon. They are defeated. I mean, they're beaten in 68 at Tet, but nevertheless, it's absolutely shattered the idea that the Americans were invincible, they couldn't win. And there's loads of, if you read the kind of testimony of people in the autobiographies, the memoirs at the time, they're saying, on the left, we're so used to being defeated, we're so used to heroic defeats. And of course, Tet was a defeat, but nevertheless, we're saying, my God, they're pushing back the Americans. These people, the third world peoples were sneered at, and Dukes, and all the rest of it, have actually driven the Americans back here, temporarily defeated in Saigon. And at that point, you can see the American Roman class itself going, can we win this? We have to start thinking how we can get into the mess, that's going to be created here. The second figure, of course, is May in France itself. First of all, the student people, and then the general strike. Now, it's really important here that for about 25 years beforehand, the people saying endlessly, the workers will never hold a general strike again, there'll never be huge upheavals in the Bolshevik model. I mean, it's classically, André Gorz, unfortunately, committed himself to saying in the pages of the Socialist Register in 1968 that there would never ever be another general strike again in history. Unfortunately, it came out after May had happened. The biggest general strike in human history had occurred 2 months before it disappeared. So, be cautious when you're saying that nothing will ever happen again in this kind of way. But I mean, it was like, that was the point that was coming out of the blue. Now, if God had checked the facts, you would have seen there was an explosion building up in France. But people were interested, they just assumed that was all over, it was never going to happen again. But it did, and again, people went, again, loads of memoirs and lots of others still going, oh my God, we couldn't believe it. We're looking at this and thinking, what's happening? I mean, thousands of people marching down the street, fighting the police, all this kind of stuff. Where are we? We're back in 1917 or something like this. The left was almost as surprised by it as the right were, because although we talk about revolution and so on, so many people forget it's actually going to happen, and then it brought us to the edge of a revolution anyway. Okay. I said earlier that what's important about this is the idea of connection between different struggles in the sense that they all are linked together in some way. I'll give you one example as I'm running out of time. And it's to do with Southern Africa. Let's think of the global south then. The struggle in particularly Angola and Mozambique against the Portuguese regime, this is the first connection. It's clearly heading for victory in 1974. As a response to that, I gather typically young officers in Portugal itself stage a coup d'etat for the regime, and in doing so detonate the revolution, the Portuguese Revolution of 1974-75. So it's a direct impact of the struggle in Africa feeding back to the heartland of the colonial power that was trying to maintain those states there. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, particularly the struggle in Mozambique has a big detrimental effect in what was then called Rhodesia, or we now call Zimbabwe, because there too was a guerrilla struggle, and they thought, oh wait a minute, they're winning, so can we also win? It inspire, or at least give greater strength to people in Zimbabwe to struggle on. Third thing though, the American State Department, seeing this, normally would have intervened to help the Portuguese power, or to stop the revolutionary taking power in Angola and Mozambique, and people were talking about it. But here's the third connection. Vietnam had happened, and one of the things that happened in Vietnam was part actually of the anti-war movement was the revolt of the GIs against the actual war itself, particularly the black GIs. So Henry Kissinger is going, okay, we'll send in some troops to stop these commies taking over in Angola and Mozambique. And Colin Powell, for it was he, said to him, are you going to arm them? Because if you do, they'll probably turn their guns on their officers and not on the MPLA at all. And so Kissinger, once sensing, this might be right, didn't actually send American troops in. This is the beginning of the Vietnam syndrome, the so-called way in which they can't intervene because of the fear of what resistance there would be from their own troops. So instead, they do a deal with the South Africans. So the regime in South Africa sends in its troops to the former Portuguese colonies instead. And here we come to the fourth thing. They're defeated, smashed, and sent back home with killed in their legs, thus detonating or helping to detonate the struggle in South Africa, around the townships and Soweto and so on, in the struggle against the imposition of Afrikaans. So these are like real connections between struggles, real impacts showing the kind of way in which the whole world struggle was actually joined up together. I could give others, but I don't have time. I should just say that it wasn't all positive. Some of the fantasies of the French left in particular about Maoism are truly astonishing to read now. But at least the Maoists didn't actually attempt to set up peasant guerrilla struggle in Essex or Illinois or whatever, or seek to swim amongst the peasants. But Guevara did. I mean, in the horror of the weathermen, the weather people in America, attempting to set up an ultimately urban guerrilla disaster strategies, are partly these maybe you can take something from the third world and impose it on the first, and simply this will work. And as far as the Guevara are concerned, it isn't even true actually that the strategies that worked in Cuba were able to be reproduced elsewhere in Latin America. I mean, Cuba, the Cuban Revolution was successful, partly because nobody was expecting it. But the ruling class does learn from history, They could see what happened there, they wouldn't prevent it happening again. Hence the failure of attempts to simply reproduce these strategies elsewhere in Latin America. Okay, endings. What happened? Was it true that the revolution in Georgia was simply defeated? I think it's not entirely the case, because there were defeats, obviously, starting in Czechoslovakia in '68, the defeat of Prague Spring quite early on, and there were defeats like attempted insurrection in Ceylon, in 1974, in Ceylon in 1971, and a series of military coups, starting, of course, with Chile, and first 9/11 in 1973, but extending into Uruguay and Argentina and Thailand in 1976. These are defeats, but they're not overwhelming. It's not the entire every move is beaten. There were victories, of course, the defeat of the regime in Pakistan in '69, famously in this country, of course, the miners' strike in '73, which effectively brought down the Tories the following year when there was an actual election. So there's a mixture of success and failure, but there's a kind of way in which no serious overthrow takes place in the centre of the system that would actually start the definitive process of revolution spreading throughout the world. Instead, what you have is perhaps might call the catastrophe of victory in Cambodia in particular. This is supposed to be a socialist state. Was it a genocidal worker state or something? Why would no one's really attracted the idea of socialism if it carries out the Khmer Rouge atrocities, or then the embers fighting in Vietnam and China and so on over Alaska. So the kind of way in which that simply acts as a kind of problem for the left. I think the left would call these countries socialist, or certainly any sense of socialism. There's kind of accommodation, what they call victories that are compatible with survival of the system, and that's the overthrow of all the military dictatorships. Greece, first of all, Portugal, and finally Spain in '76. Now, a lot of people, including I've seen my own tradition, the international socialist one, argued this would never happen. It would only happen in days of permanent revolution. There had to be a working class overthrow and so on. You couldn't, survive. The regimes could not survive. They would either survive as fascists or they'd be overthrown by workers' revolution. No, I'm afraid not. And that's proved to be the case elsewhere since then as well. They were capable of actually overthrowing regimes and establishing relatively stable bourgeois regimes thereafter. So it's kind of, once that happened, there's a kind of way of accommodating to the system in all the other places. We haven't seen a successful revolution. Let's try and get the best we can out of it through the reformist parties or offering this, that. And a lot of new reformist organisations are emerging in Europe, including in the three states I've just mentioned. This kind of way in which the counterculture becomes normalised in the way I described. And so the thing just begins to tail off. It doesn't come to a dramatic conclusion. It's not like 1923 with a non-event of a German Revolution or whatever. It just, and then all of a sudden you do it in a different period. We're no longer in 1968 or 1945 or 1917. Something else has happened here. And I remember entering political life in 1976. Since racism, then the Anti-Nazi League, and since '68 was historical. It was something that was over. It was just recently become over, but that was no longer the period I was in. It was a new thing happening at that stage. Two things to say. One thing I haven't mentioned, but I think it's going to make the future, and that is, Howell, a person who made a speech in 1968, the so-called Rivers of Blood speech, which does not bear any resemblance to anything that Jeremy Corbyn has ever said, by the way, contrary to what Jonathan Sachs has been talking about last week. But this speech, we know about it because of the racism, because of the anti-immigration positions and so on. But actually, there's another sense in which Powell is a progenitor of what is then to come. And that is essentially what I call vanguard neoliberalism. On the one hand, deep conservative attitudes towards race, immigration, and the family, all the rest of it, but the support for free markets, for unchecked capitalism, and so on. Powell was one of the first people to actually put this really toxic mix together. In a sense, Thatcher, and then, well, I'm not Reagan, probably no idea what it was, certainly Thatcher followed this in Harris in the regime that took over in 79 and the birth of neoliberalism. What I think that means is if you don't succeed in taking power, if the revolution doesn't succeed, the ruling class won't sit back forever and just wait for things to unfold. And in the face of the economic crisis which exploded in 73, they have their own solution, and that solution is what we call neoliberalism. Two final points, or questions for you really, which is, why haven't we had anything like this since then? Why haven't we had another revolutionary conjuncture of the kind of state that took place in 68 to 76? There are certainly been regional struggles, obviously the Eastern Europe in 89, the Arab Spring in 2011, the more fragmented big tide in Latin America between those dates, if you like, but there's never been anything we feel this is a world situation in which all these things are coming together. Why not? And secondly, what would it involve if there was one? It would obviously be different. Some of the things would still be the same. I guess for all against secession, students would no longer be involved, would obviously be involved as well in some way, and workers obviously would. But the other things like environment, other things. So, my own thoughts about this, but I think this is what you think of it is. What do you think the next conjuncture would actually look like? Let's celebrate 68 and remember it in our hearts and all the rest of it. But at the same time, what's more important is think about how can we do it again and this time be successful. That's probably the question we need to really deal with. Thank you.